First review I do since shaving my beard ends up being a werewolf movie. Talk about irony. Wolfman. If we include the first flick and its 6 sequels, plus the 2010 remake, this is the 9th film in the Wolfman legacy. 9 times. In the film, a man's biology begins to mutate after an accident, and he must do all he can to maintain his humanity and prevent himself from harming those he loves as the infection spreads, and he quickly becomes something monstrous, blah, blah, blah. You've seen it all before. Give me the good stuff. Right out the gate, Wolfman's opening sequence is filled to the brim with tension and atmosphere. I was legitimately surprised by how patient the scene was, building suspense so deliberately, one shot at a time, until I could quite literally feel how tense my body had become watching it. This opening scene not only sets the tone of the film, but signals to the audience that this is a different kind of lycanthrope legend. Much like how 2020's Invisible Man remake was restructured as a story about domestic abuse, I really enjoyed the direction that director Leigh Whannell and his team took this narrative. While the Wolfman franchise has always been about dysfunctional families, in particular estranged fathers and sons, I found that reframing the story as an intimate look on how a parent's childhood trauma can manifest in monstrous ways and have a lasting effect on their own children was a particularly inspired avenue to explore. The design for the titular Wolfman is fresh and inventive. Leigh Whannell specifically wanted the monster transformation to resemble more of an infectious disease rather than the cursed dog-human hybrid from past interpretations, and it makes the eventual deterioration of our lead character that much more disturbing and tragic. Also, the fact that they did all the special effects in camera because the makeup crew was essentially forbade from using CGI just makes it all that much more impressive. I, for one, found this movie to be quite clever in how it divvied out its scares. There's almost no jump scares, except for one really good one. Most of the scares we do get are from the periphery. Personally, I find peripheral horror some of the scariest shit you can do in a horror movie. This is when you see something off to the side or in the background of a shot, or the scariest, in my personal opinion, something off in the distance. Wolfman uses this technique for the bulk of its scares, and while it might not be everyone's cup of tea, it certainly unnerves the holy heck out of yours truly. And now it's time to talk about the shit. I definitely have some issues with the script. There are certainly some clunky lines of dialogue that sound like generic movie lines as opposed to how normal everyday people talk. And probably more importantly, in terms of originality, where, don't get me wrong, this film does tick off a lot of boxes, but, and spoiler warning here, if you've ever seen a werewolf movie, you know how this shit is gonna end. Now, I cannot give you a definitive answer for what should have been done to improve upon that, but certainly any sort of deviation from this sort of finale in a monster movie would have been a significant improvement in terms of a more interesting conclusion. Piggybacking on my issues with the script, I have found that in the past, director Leigh Whannell has managed to get some incredible performances from his actors, Elizabeth Moss and Logan Marshall Green being a couple of the standouts. And the actors here are damn good, there's no question about that, but at certain times it does seem that they are unable to rise above the more clunky dialogue and weaker elements in the script. It's not bad acting by any means. Quite frankly, more often than not, it's very, very good acting, but it does manage to be inconsistent. And for a story with such an essential emotional core, these inconsistencies do hurt the overall gut punch of the narrative. Go ahead and give me that rewatch. I sincerely enjoyed watching this picture, and while I'm not going to give it an insanely rewatchable ranking, because that's like Jurassic Park levels of greatness we're talking about here, folks, I will give it a yearly rewatch ranking, because I can absolutely see myself going back to this flick on a semi-regular basis. And if I was going to show Wolfman at the Jony Horror Drive-In and double feature it with another movie moving picture, well, I suppose the obvious choice would be the aforementioned David Cronenberg's The Fly, or even Lionel's Invisible Man reboot. But for my pick, I am gonna go with another family man turns on his loved ones psychological horror thriller, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Not to get too personal here, but as a child who grew up having to deal with parental anger issues on a semi-frequent basis, and now being a parent myself, having the mentality of, I will never be like that to my children, and then finding yourself inevitably falling prey to those same issues is a topic that I think Wolfman handles spectacularly well. Our lead character's struggles with how to avoid becoming his father is a universal problem, and I just don't think I've ever seen it approached in such a clever and ponderous fashion as it is in this film. So for that, the body and peripheral horror working on all cylinders and an inventive approach to worn down, tired out material, I think I'm gonna be generous and give this puppy an 8 out of 10. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Jony Horror Reviews. I am your host, Jony Horror, encouraging all you diseased, wolf-faced maniacs to be good to one another. Be half-decent human beings, and we'll see you on the next full moon. Say, welcome to the Jony Horror Show.
Welcome to the Jony Horror Show.
Can I have a kiss? Thanks.